NFL Survivor Pools, it's week 13. You've got the most in-depth, unique analysis in all of Survivor Pool content coming at you next on Scratching and Surviving. All right, guys, welcome to Scratching and Surviving, where we try to get you to the finish line here in Survivor Pools. I know a lot of you are coming back as you survived last week, which means you're down to the nitty-gritty in your pool. We are getting down to just very few entries left. 30 to 35% of you were knocked out last week. Hopefully you were not one of them, and you're probably not since you're watching this video right now. Shout out to my mom who took her pool down. It's about 50 entries to start the pool. She took the Rams last week. Went out on a limb there. She just had this theory where in the beginning of the year she was going to be going against Arizona. As they started to look a little bit better, she got off of that, and she decided, you know what, the Rams own Arizona. This was her words to me. I didn't know until last night that she actually won this pool. She said the Rams own Arizona. I was taking the Rams. I didn't care. And her opponent, of course, took Minnesota on Monday night, and she was able to take down her pool. So congrats to Mom there. And if any of you guys have won your pools, please give me a shout out here. You can find me over on Twitter at Statsational and let me know. I love to hear from the guys who won. Even if you didn't win, I'd still love to hear from you. So check me out over there. All right, guys, of course, you know, download the Sharp app. It's kind of reversed here. So how do we get it on camera? There we go. Download the Sharp app. That's the QR code, and use code SURVIVOR to get yourself 20% off of the pro subscription to the Sharp app. Now, this week, interesting stuff we've got going on. We talked about last week, we had Thanksgiving, where Detroit knocked about 10% of people out of pools. And then the big one was that Monday night game with Minnesota. That was 20 to 25% of people were knocked out with Minnesota. So we talked a little bit about hedging last week. We'll go into some more hedging this week because you've got an opportunity to do that most likely for most of you guys. So let's jump into the week that we're looking at. We're going to go right into Survivor Grid. And you can see here, Miami, the biggest favorite of the week, only being taken by 1.8% of pools. Reason being, most people have taken Miami already, right? If you didn't take them, if you hadn't taken them up until last week, there's a good chance you took them last week against the Jets. But if somehow you are still surviving with Miami in your back pocket, maybe some of you guys who are in pools that started in week 4, 5, 6, later in the season, the pools that start up again mid-season, you may have Miami available to you. Pretty tough to pass on them, but you do see we've got Tennessee next week, which they should be an even larger favorite at home. And then the Jets, they may be an even larger favorite than that in week 15. So it is a team potentially in large pools that you do want to stay away from. But if you've been playing from week 1 and you've managed to save Miami, there's a good chance you're going to want to take them here this week. Although you've got some other options, and then you're going to be in real good shape for week 14. So I can totally understand hanging on to Miami. Now, if Dallas is a team that you've held on to at this point, this is almost certainly a week that you're going to have to take the Cowboys. 9-point favorites, 9.5-point favorites, something like that this week. And as you look, Philly, Buffalo, Miami, Detroit, there is no opportunity to take them between weeks 14 and 17. And if you make it to week 18, there's going to be a whole lot of hedging going on. I'm not worried about week 18 at Washington. You just never know, is Dallas even playing their starters by that point? So we can see that this is probably the last time you're going to want to take Dallas if you have them in your back pocket. Most people do not. Thus, the only 1% of pools entries that are taking Dallas. You definitely want to take Dallas here. It's extremely high leverage spot if you have them available to you. But let's talk about the teams that are most likely teams that you can take this week. The number one team being taken currently, Tampa. I am still in my pool. Last week, I had Tennessee and Philly. Was able to advance. It's been double picks now for quite some time. There's 23 out of like 8,000 entries left. I've still got one left. I'm in it with a group of guys, and really we wanted to switch to New England, or at least I did. I was talking about switching to New England last week because that line jumped up to 4.5. New England, a team obviously that we would not want to take again. And luckily, my teammates here and my partners in the pool were not fans of moving to New England. I didn't love New England myself, but I like to play it by the numbers, as you guys know. And being that they were the larger favorite between themselves and Philly, I was looking to move off of Philly and move on to New England. That would have been disaster. So thanks for my partners who kept us on kept us on the Eagles, and that was not a fun game to sweat out, although it's always fun once you win it. But Tampa this week, right? 27% of people taking Tampa. I'm going to have them in my pool as one of my picks. Kind of forced there. I don't have much in the way of options unless I went to Pittsburgh. But I'm going Tampa and the Chargers. Those are my two teams that I have available. They're the two largest favorites that I have available to me, and those are going to be the teams I'm taking. No one's going to be in love taking the Chargers here on the road. They've been just a disappointing team, but we've seen how bad New England is. So hopefully I could get by again one more week. And let's just look at what Tampa's got going on for the rest of the year. Really nothing. This is the week Tampa is going to be the only option that you're going to take them unless you're saving them for Week 18 at Carolina. And again, Week 18, just a tough week to ever save anybody. And you can get them against Carolina at home now in Week 13. So that's why they look like maybe the best option on the board considering what people have left. If we look at the next best option or the next most taken team, it's Jacksonville. They're playing the Monday night game against Cincinnati. Now, we can see Week 17 a long ways away unless you're in a massively large pool that's single entries each week. That's definitely going to get to Week 17. I'm not even considering this. In my double pick pool, I don't think it's getting more than Week 15, so I'm not really concerned with Week 16, 17, 18. I'm playing for the now. I'm trying to take the best teams I possibly can, using a little game theory when possible, like last week on fading Minnesota. We thought that was the right play, being able to get off of Minnesota and taking a team like Philly that was pretty much comparable in the spread, but a whole lot less people were going to be taken, and it worked out for us last week, so we got a little bit closer to the finish line. That's the kind of things you want to look at. You know, you could take a little bit of a lesser team, and lesser team, I mean a smaller percentage chance of winning if it's going to give you a high leverage situation. Now, you see the EV, which is another way of saying the leverage on Jacksonville, is 1.1. That's based on what their probability is of winning and then how many people are taking them in the pool. So if you have Jacksonville available to you, I love this pick. And it's not just for the fact that they are the third best option this week, but they play on Monday Night Football. And we've talked about this briefly in past videos, but now you should be, especially when you get down in smaller sizes in the pool, you have to really start thinking about hedging your picks. And then we talked about hedging. When do you want to start hedging? Again, there's a little bit of science here and a little bit of art, and it's kind of, you have to combine the two. But when you've built up enough equity in your pool, meaning you've lost enough people in the pool to the point where you've got some equity, and the equity you want to convert into actual cash, you can do that by hedging. Now, the best way to hedge is playing the solo games, that night game, the Sunday night game, the Monday night game, even better, because you're going to have all that information available to you, what happened during this week. So, for instance, if Pittsburgh were to lose and you lost, let's say you were down to 10 people in your pool, 3 of them have Pittsburgh, right? Now you're down to 7. That's going to give you a much better feel for how much you need to hedge, because your equity is going to change. Your equity can only get better if you take the Monday night game. If your equity gets better, then you have the ability to hedge for even more money. So it's important, if you're kind of in a toss-up between a couple of teams, take the team playing later. That's the team you're going to be able to hedge with the best, and you're going to be making a much better hedge decision. So I like it when you have those options, and we've got it this week. So I think Jacksonville winds up being a play. If you have Jacksonville available to you, I think that winds up being a really strong play for the hedging possibilities. Now, again, I'm talking about those of you who are in pools that have gotten down to the point where a hedge makes sense. If you're still down to 100 people left in your pool, really difficult to hedge. The more people left, the less equity you have, the more likely that the pool is going to go 18 weeks, which means more time, right? Time is another factor. If we were down to week 18, then we know exactly where we stand here. If we were down to week 18 with 1 game left on the board, you know exactly where you stand, whether you win or lose. That hedge bet becomes a lot easier to make. When you've got 6 weeks available or left in the pool, and it looks like we're going to go all 6 weeks because you've got a few hundred people left in your pool, hedging becomes more difficult. So you've got to factor all those things in. So that's why we want to gather as much information as we can. Using the Monday Night Football game does help us there. So if we were in a pool of 10 people left, 3 are knocked out on Pittsburgh, now we're down to 7, and let's say we've got 2 or 3 of us have Jacksonville in the game. That gives us a good idea of how much we should be hedging. Now, again, to hedge, you want to make sure that you don't put yourself in a situation where you're losing money at the end of the hedge. And what I mean by that is you can, let's say it was $100 entry into your pool. Well, at a minimum, you might want to just get your $100 back and say, all right, I played this year for free. If you hedge every week and continue to lose your hedge bet, that's fine because you're going to ultimately win the pool. But you don't want to ever get yourself in a situation where you hedge $100 this week, you hedge $100 next week, you lose both of those, and then you have to now hedge $200 just to break yourself even, and now you lose that as well, and you wind up in a situation where eventually you lose the pool, and at best, you just broke even on your hedges, right? So that's why the less amount of time that you have left and the more equity you have left, the better situation you'll be in as far as your hedge bets. Again, it's a lot to get into on these videos, so leave a comment down below and give me your specific situation that you're in, and I'll try to guide you guys into some good hedge scenarios. The other thing with hedging is, do you want to hedge on the money line or do you want to hedge with the spread? I personally like hedging with the spread. You're going to have to risk more when you hedge with the spread because hedging on the money line, you're taking the team that's most likely going to be a plus money dog, which means you can hedge less money, but when you hedge with the spread, it gives you the opportunity to win both bets. So this week, if you are going to hedge with Jacksonville, you can take Cincinnati plus the points and potentially win the bet and advance in your survivor pool, which is the ultimate. That's the best scenario possible there. And now you're ahead on your hedge bets and you are still alive in your pool. And more than likely, you've now gained equity in the pool. And at a minimum, you've shrunk the amount of time left in your pool, which also increases your hedging ability. So we've got those options available to us. When we just jump back in Survivor Grid, let's talk about the other teams that we have not mentioned yet. Pittsburgh, a team that is being taken 23% of pools. Here's the thing with Pittsburgh. They've got New England next week then they're probably going to be a larger favorite at home against New England than they are this week at home against Arizona. So let's assume you have Pittsburgh and Jacksonville available to you. And you also have, let's look at week 14, what some of the other teams are going to be. Now, you probably don't have Miami, San Francisco, or Baltimore, but maybe you have New Orleans. So how would I figure out if I want to take which line I want to take? Do I want to take Pittsburgh next week or do I want to take them this week? Right. So I would look at it. Obviously, it's going to depend on the teams that you have. Let's say you have Jacksonville available to you and Pittsburgh available to you, and you've also got New Orleans for next week. Well, I would look at it this way. I have the option of taking Jacksonville and Pitt next week, or I could take Pittsburgh now and New Orleans next week. I mean, you could certainly take Pittsburgh. You could take Jacksonville and Pittsburgh or Jacksonville and New Orleans, either or. But let's just say you want to save that Pittsburgh pick because then maybe you take Jacksonville, Pittsburgh, and then look at this. You've got New Orleans at home in week 15. So maybe you want to save it. So if that's your line, the way that you do the math here, just to figure out what's the highest likelihood, for one, you want to figure out the win percentage. Now, the win percentage on the Survivor Grid is going to be close to what the actual win percentage should be. My advice to you guys is if you download the Sharp app and just use the free version, you take the midpoint in the money lines, and if you understand how to convert the money line into implied probabilities, I've got videos on that here on this channel. If you subscribe to our channel and you look at the Sharp Academy videos, it's basically a course on sports betting. Look for the videos on implied odds and implied probabilities, and I'll see if I can link to that for you guys. But that's going to help you convert the money line into implied odds, and that's going to tell you what the implied odds are. So if we use the implied odds based on those calculations, or you just use Survivor Grid, which is fine as well, it's going to get you close enough. If you take a team like Jacksonville, if you multiply, let's say we're going to use the 76%. If you multiply their win percentage, the probability is of them winning, and then you multiply that by what you think the win probability is going to be, let's say, of the next team that you're going to take. Let's say you're going to go with the Jacksonville-Pittsburgh. Well, Pittsburgh at 6.5, you're like, well, what is a 6.5 win percentage? Well, let's look at this week. I mean, it's about 71%. Kansas City at 6.5 is about 71%. If you do the math, you're going to be 76% multiplied by 71%. Let me do it kind of behind the scenes here. By 71%, it's going to be 54%. All right. So if you multiply those two things, that's how you figure out whether or not both of those events are going to happen. So you're going to have a little bit better than a 50-50 chance of advancing. Now, if we took the probability of, let's say we're going to go with the, who's the team? Arizona this week at a 70% chance. Let's say, so we've got them at a 70% chance. And then next week, we've got the 71% chance with the New Orleans game. Now we have a 49.7% chance. So we're slightly less. We've got about a 4 or 5% less chance of that line hitting. And it's not a huge percentage, but if you want to play it strictly by the numbers, what gives us the best chance of advancing, that's how you would figure it out. That's also how you would figure out, hey, what's the probability? Like, I have 2 picks this week, and what's my probability of both of these picks advancing? So I'm taking Tampa and the Chargers as of now. So I'm basically looking at multiplying that 69.5%. So if I multiply the 69.5 by 67.4, I've got a 47% chance of advancing. So I'm a dog here to advance. I think a lot of people miss that. They look, well, I've got 2 favorites. The probability of me winning both of those games next week is actually less than 50-50. I'm a plus money dog to advance in my pool. So that's good to know for your own knowledge. Just, it helps you with your hedging. It does help with your expectations as well. I've talked about this. Just think about being able to take 7-point favorites every week, right? Let's take a 7.5-point favorite like Jacksonville. Let's assume they're a 76% chance to win. The probability of you hitting that team, and you had the ability to take a 7.5-point favorite every week, let's just say 0.76, and we multiply that by 0.76, right? That's 58%-ish just to win 2 weeks. We do that again, that's your probability to win 3 weeks, and you're down to 44%. To win 4 weeks is 33%. You could see as you start increasing this, you do it again, it's down to 25%. Your probability of winning 10 weeks in a row becomes extremely difficult, right? So that is the reason we get so few people left by the time we are here in week 13 in these pools. So again, guys, leave your comments down below. Let me know if you've subscribed to the Sharp app, and if you get a pro subscription, use that code Survivor. Let me know what you guys are doing this week. I really want to hear from you guys, especially those of you who won. So hit me up at Statsational on Twitter. Love to hear from you guys. Good luck this week. We will be back. Hopefully next week you'll be that much closer to winning all the money. Good luck, guys.